to have Tim Wegner here. He's a travel writer for Matador Network, one of the coolest travel companies out there. And first of all, Tim, thanks for being here.
Yeah, no worries, man. Thanks for having me.
And second of all, this is the first time I've ever done a dream jobbing with virtually. So you're a scholar for doing that.
Glad to be the guinea pig. We'll see how this goes.
Okay, cool. So Tim's, if you ever look at someone like living their dream, getting to write about amazing travel locations around the world, this is the guy who gets to do it. So we're going to try to dive in here and figure out how Tim, got and landed his dream career and job. So Tim, first question is the obvious one of where was that spark for writing, and maybe specifically travel writing in your case? Like, when was it being like, wow, this is found that I have a real passion for this?
Yeah, man. It's honestly started young. I wrote kind of a quote unquote sports magazine when I was like 8 or 10 years old and sold subscriptions to my parents. So I kind of always had like a writing background. That was the one thing I was good at school. It was the one thing I actually didn't hate doing. I got on the newspaper in high school and stuff. So that I kind of had that guiding light that was my major in school, was communication. So I never really had anything else to do. That was the one thing I liked and that I was good at. So I just kind of followed that. But I kind of got into doing it more professionally through the music world. Actually, I was in a punk band for a long time, and we traveled around a bit, and I got to know basically somebody that did a music magazine in Denver, and started contributing articles to him, and eventually worked my way into an editor job with him, and kind of just grew the career from that. But it's been a long road, and I'm sure we'll get a little deeper on that lately. But writing for me has always just kind of been the one thing that I thought I could focus on, that I knew I wasn't terrible at doing.
That's fascinating and interesting that, like, from the band to the writing, was it by happenstance? Were you just looking for a job to make some money, or was there a moment where you're like, wow, like I can actually make a living doing this, what I really love?
Yeah, I think I kind of had this probably foolish thing in my head. It was like, what else am I going to do? I was working in a restaurant coming out of college, playing in a band, kind of, not making a ton of money. I wasn't unhappy, but I wasn't super stoked either. I was kind of trying to figure out what the next step was going to be. Started writing for this website, magazine that I was talking about. It was, I got a $50 a week gig. So it was nowhere near full time. And that was the first confidence boost. It was like, there's at least some money in this. I don't know if this is going to be the big thing, but anyway, I kind of just slowly grew it. And over the next 5 years was kind of able to start ramping down restaurant work and other stuff I was doing, and ramping up writing as I slowly worked up this ladder of freelancing. It's been a career ladder in a way, but a little different than going the corporate office route, I think, because there's no clear path. You're kind of walking through a dark room and hoping you make the right turn, and you just got to stay focused and network. I've built everything I've been able to make on networking and going to events, going to conferences, talking to people, and then emailing them the next week. That's how I've been able to make steps up,
Wow. Yeah. So what, from that $50 a week to being a, full-time writer for Matador, right? The epicenter of, travel writing.
Yeah.
What are those steps? Can you walk us through those steps?
Sure. So $50 a week, I was doing a weekly column about the music scene in Denver for a website. One night I was out covering an event for that website. I was sitting at the bar having a beer with a guy that I knew, and he pointed to another gentleman that was on the other side of the room and was like, "That's the publisher of Colorado Music Buzz right there." And I was like, I had a little liquid courage in me, I guess, but I went up and shook the guy's hand and was like, "Hey, I would love to write for you if you're ever looking for anybody." He gave me his card, told me to email him. So I started contributing for him shortly after that. We had a few emails back and forth. And then about 6 months later, they sent out a email to all of their contributors saying that they were looking to bring 2 editors on board. So I sent a resume in, of course, and answer their questions that they had. And then I knew that they were doing an event that weekend in a suburb of Denver called Parker. So I went and showed up at the event and basically sat the guy down and was like, you have to give me this. You have to give me this gig. This is why I'm the right person, blah, 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 blah. And I left the event thinking I came on a little too strong, but it worked. I got the job about 2 weeks later. And this was in 2011. That would have been the fall of 2011 when that happened. I was with them for about 4 years, did some freelancing and stuff on the side there. But then that magazine actually went out of business in 2015. And I was kind of back to square one. I had some contacts. I had some experience at this point. And I happened to be on Facebook one day just scrolling through my feed, and someone shared a Matador article that drew me in. So I read it, started browsing around the site, saw that they had a program that you could sign up. It was called Matador U. It's no longer active, but essentially you signed up for a writing course, and it was kind of an in with the magazine. So I signed up for that, got a bunch of great feedback on my writing. Yeah, some of it not so friendly, but that's what you need to hear now and then, I guess. And then freelance for them for a while. Was doing a lot of other freelancing for some different publications. Started doing a lot of SEO copywriting, which for anyone looking to become a writer, that's what people pay for. If you dive deep into SEO, what Google wants to see, that's what people pay for. So if you can figure out how to make copy that is SEO optimized, you can find clients that will pay you to write their blog or do their outreach for them, because that's what people need. So I was doing that for a few years, and then kind of a similar thing happened before. I was on their job board at Matador, where they post articles that they need, and they post this person needs this needs that. They had a job opening for an outreach coordinator. So I emailed the person on the list. Her name was Alice, and sent her a resume. And fortunately, I had worked with her in the past. I had worked with several of the other Matador editors in the past. So I kind of had the advantage of that. They all knew my name. They all knew me. They'd seen my work, and knew that I knew how to meet a deadline. So again, the networking thing came through. I had over 3 years met basically their entire editorial staff virtually. Of course, it's a remote company, but I just got to know people, and then responded when the call came.
Wow. So networking and that SEO, what an interesting piece of advice. Awesome piece of advice,
Yeah, it's interesting because it seems so random, and it's SEO copywriting is boring, but there is money in it. There's a lot of sites like Upwork and other job boards, Remotey, all these different companies that offer remote opportunities for contractors and even employees sometimes. But if you peruse those things, the one thing you will see more often than not is SEO, whether that's design or development or copywriting. You've got to know SEO if you want to make a living online. So It's a good thing to think about.
Yeah, that's great advice. So it's what are I don't want to start with the negative, but I always think when people are quote unquote living their dream job, there's a lot of other stuff going on behind the scenes that people don't see. What are some of the biggest challenges, right? Or some of the misconceptions that people might think, wow, what a glamorous job, but maybe not every part of it actually is.
Yeah, for sure. I think the first thing that people ask me a lot is, are you just traveling all the time? And honestly, the answer to that is no. I travel a lot, but most of my job is on a computer researching and putting work together and editing other people's work. So it's much more of a stare at the screen gig than I think people realize. A lot of travel journalism is armchair journalism, which essentially means you're researching stuff on the internet and then putting it into an article. There's a fair amount of press trips and being out in the field doing stuff, but a lot of the stuff I do and my colleagues do is on the computer. So that would be one thing. Another thing that's tough is that, I work on a contract. Even with Matador, technically I'm a full-time staff, but it's a contract, which has pros and cons. I'm free to freelance and work with other people, but there's not a security that you're going to find in an office job. There's no benefits. There's no health insurance. all of those stuff, you kind of have to figure out how to do all these things. You've got to learn accounting. You've got to learn, you've got to manage your own time. You've got to find a workspace. You've got to do all of these things that in a more traditional setting are taken care of for you. You've got to save money for taxes. That's another thing. Stuff like that is once you get a hold of it, it becomes part of the routine. But certainly walking out the door into the world of freelancing is a slap in the face in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Well, what about the best parts? What are the basic? What makes you keep driving to do this? This job. What's the best part about being a travel writer, and specifically, for Matador?
I love traveling. That would be a big thing. I like going to new places. But my favorite thing about the work, and the thing that helps make that I firmly believe that going to new places and embedding yourself in new cultures is absolutely paramount to having an understanding of how the world works, and to as cheesy as it sounds, make the world a better place. I think that closing off mentality is one of the most negative things that can happen. And I think that the more people are willing to step out of their comfort zone and accept ways of life that are unfamiliar to them, and see the value in that and recognize it as equal to their own, I think only positive things come from that. And I think that if there is one productive takeaway from travel writing, that is it.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. All right, so Tim, final question, especially for, our students or maybe younger people out there. If you look back and you were going to give yourself some advice, years ago when you were starting out, or for a kid right now that's like, listen, I would love to be just a writer, whether that's, freelance or full-time, whether it's in travel space or in any other space, like what are those tangible, I mean, you were talking about SEO. Are there any like tangible advice that you can say, like, listen, you got to do X, Y, and Z. You want to be successful. Here's what I wish I knew.
Sure, man. I think the biggest piece of advice I could give to myself 10 years ago, or to anybody that's coming out of school, is that you have to make it happen. I came out of college without really any path for a career or any idea of how to make it happen. And I remember thinking at the time, well, maybe this major needs a master's degree. Maybe that's what I need to do. Maybe I need to do this. Maybe I need to do that. But really what it comes down to is just doing it yourself. I think that as more companies go remote, more companies are hiring contractors instead of employees, which there are pros and cons to that. But I think that the way the current workforce is evolving, it's all about self-motivation and putting yourself out there. And if you're sitting around waiting for something to happen, it's not going to happen. Don't be afraid to send that email or send that friend request or show up at an event, because that's how people remember you, and that's how you're going to get a step ahead.
Yeah, great advice, man. Listen, Tim, I really appreciate it. I know everyone who's watching really appreciates this advice, and keep it up, man. You're living the dream, and thanks for taking a minute with Dream Jobbing.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. I hope I wasn't too preachy. I know I go on a tangent now.
No, all awesome stuff, man. We appreciate it. And after we wrap up here, I'll give you a shout back. Sound good?
Right. Sounds good, man. Thanks again.
All right.